All right. Ready? Minute? Okay, you tell me. Good. All right. Good evening, everyone. It is 6 p.m. and this is the regular meeting of the Economic Development Commission for Tuesday, February 10th at 6 o'clock, German Village boardroom. I'd like to call this meeting to order. This meeting has been given public notice in accordance with section 19.83 and 19.84 Wisconsin statutes in such form that will apprise the general public and news media of the subject matter that is intended for consideration and action. We'll move on to roll call. All commissioners are present except for Jim Sedgwick, who gave notice. And I'd like to move on to item 3, announcements. Are there any announcements?
I have a quick announcement. The chamber is hosting a leadership luncheon on February 18th at Wisconsin Country Club. The topic is emotional intelligence in the workplace begins with you. So that registration is still open on the chamber website. I encourage you all to come. And also on March 11th, the chamber will be hosting a candidate forum here at the Village Hall. We will have, hopefully, it is not mandatory for these candidates to attend, just highly encouraged. The race for circuit judge, county supervisors, village board, and school board should be in attendance.
Great. Anyone else? I have a couple of announcements, upcoming events. There will be for the K9 group, there will be a chili cook-off on Sunday, February 23rd at Bub's Irish Pub. And that's from 2 to 5 p.m. It's only $10 per person. There's lots of chili. You get to vote. It's fun. And $25 for a family. So you can't lose. And also we have on February 19th is the, do you want to talk about it, Scott? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Oh, the Germantown Community Scholarship
Yes.
auction and dinner is a big fundraiser to help give scholarships to worthy students. It's a big event. It's usually a big social event and a community event. So there's still a few seats available, but they are filling up fast. It's registration closes. I don't know the exact date. Maybe it closed already, but if you talk nice to somebody from the commission, they can probably get you in. So there's still a couple seats as far as I knew last couple days ago.
It's February 19th at 4 p.m. And if you can't get a seat, you can always go online and bid, and your scholarship money will be taken. Thank you. Anything else from the group? Okay. This is the time for our citizen input. Please be advised per 19.84 that information and comment will be received from the public. It is policy of this municipality that public input be limited to 4 minutes, please, and per person, with a time extension granted by the discretion of chairperson, which is me. And be advised that there may be limited discussion of the information received, but no action will be taken per public comments. Comments that may be injurious to village personnel or other individuals will not be allowed. Is there anyone here for public input, citizen input? Okay, then we'll move on. Let's get to the agenda. Meeting minutes. From January, item A, January 13th, 2026, meeting minutes. I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the January 13th, 2026 meeting minutes?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on that? All right. Um, all in favor?
Aye.
Was that a discussion? Okay. Opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. All right, for the next item, it's our business development loan pool applications. And we do have one tonight. It's item A, Germantown Business Development Loan Pool application for Brandon Medved and Brandon Medved Photography LLC, DBA Bright Eyed Productions. And this is to approve the loan pool application. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve the loan pool application for Brandon Medved Photography, Bright Eyed Production.
Second.
Discussion.
Yes. So as much as I love Brandon, we do have rules on this loan pool that the business has to be in Germantown. And it states on this application, correct, that his business is out of his home, which is not in Germantown.
I addressed that with Maddie, so she's going to pull it up.
Okay.
The application, I asked, what is the address? Because of course, for us, the application is redacted, so we don't see the application, just kind of crazy. Here we are. We'll double check. The application is for $25,000. Yes.
Are we doing that now or are we tabling this and moving on?
I'm going to verify because
Okay,
Maddie has all the documentation that came in.
I see. Okay.
I'm
thank you.
sorry, I didn't.
No, I just wasn't sure.
I have rules.
Sorry, my Adobe is taking just a second.
It's okay.
No pressure.
Make a motion. Thank you. To the next item.
I'm fine with moving on.
Yeah, I'll have to go grab the original from my desk.
Shall we,
Move on and
we'll
come back to
come
this?
back to it? Is that all right?
Yep,
We're
absolutely.
not-
Then when
Make it
somebody,
Waiting for me run
right,
to run down the hallway.
so when we have one of the presentations, maybe you can.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, works for us. Thank you so much. All right.
So
So-
what, do we have to table this or?
Let's
motion?
just motion to put it toward the end. Will that work for you?
The motion. Kristen did.
Yeah, would you?
So I make a motion to move it to the bottom of new business, just make it the last item.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we will do that. Thanks for your flexibility. All right, let's move on to unfinished business. It is what we're calling Operation Storefront. And tonight we have guest speakers that are going to educate us with real estate, square footage in warehouses, lots for sale or big box stores, any of the above. And I would like to introduce Russ Sagmon. Oh, did I get it right? Sagmon. That's fine. Oh, okay. Okay. Okay, great. You're gonna have to press that, there's like a button thing There you go. Now the mic is on.
Okay, great.
Thanks
I'm
for
Russ
coming.
Magmone with Colliers, Wisconsin. I'm a partner on the retail. I run our retail group. We've got 3 offices across the state, Madison, Appleton, and Milwaukee. I've been in the retail sector for a little over 20 years. I have a team of 3. James, who a younger guy on my team that's with me for 5 years since he was an intern with Marquette. Been full-time with us 3 years, but Bob reached out to me a few months ago and just said, hey, would you mind coming in? I've done this a bunch of times, different municipalities throughout southeastern Wisconsin. Just more of a conversation back and forth, going, questions from anybody on the committee to, how does retail work? Why do we have some vacancies? Is it bad? How do we compare to others? So we printed out a few things, tools that we use, which James has on the screen as well. So to get into it, I guess I'll just kind of do a high level view of Germantown and how we see this. We do stuff all the way from the state line through the rest of the state, but primarily in southeastern Wisconsin. So we do a lot in Washington County. We track, there's something called CoStar, which we use to track real estate. And when Jan called me, she said, it's kind of hard for people when they come to town. Where do I find space? How do I find it? It is a little bit of a challenge sometimes because these are subscription models that people usually need real estate brokerage companies to help kind of find what's available without just randomly driving around. So Germantown has tracked real estate of retail, about 1.7 million square feet of retail. It's a pretty unique municipality because you've got a regional trade area on county line. You've got kind of a community trade area, which is right here on Mequon. And then you've got kind of a neighborhood retail on Main Street, which, where you're talking about Bubs, would be kind of your neighborhood retail zone. So that's unique compared to a lot of municipalities that you have all 3 of those. Of the 1.7 million square feet, there's about 4.4% vacant. There's actually 6% of that on the market because a few of those are sublease spaces that may be operating businesses. But like we had said, sometimes you might be driving around and see there's a business there. You might not know that space is available because it's on a shorter term lease or something like that we're working on behind the scenes that someone driving down the street might not necessarily know. The lion's share of that vacancy is actually, as you mentioned, and that's why Bob called me, the mid-box spaces kind of on county line. There's a couple of reasons for that. We'll get to that at the end because that's probably what you wanted to chat about is why are those vacancies here. But some of the tools that we use to kind of track this, and we can do open dialogue questions. I'll just give a 5-minute spiel about these before we jump into the questions. We use a thing called Placer AI, which is cell phone tracking data. So if you pull up this sheet, it's kind of hard to see on the screen, but the sheet that basically shows Ace Hardware, Sendix, Pick and Save, and it shows how many visits annually each of those have, and we can track everyone by their cell phones nowadays. So if you download any app, usually you're in this pool that gets sold, and so I can tell who's going to Sendix, if they're staying there for 12 minutes, or Pick and Save, where they're coming from. And James, you want to go to the next one? I can show you. So then we can show the trade areas of where these people are coming from to your community. And so I just took a couple examples, but we could do this for everybody from both Starbucks. You have 2 Starbucks in town. So you could say, well, where are those people that are going to that Starbucks? Are they living locally, or this is their home location, but we also can track where they're at work because we can base it based on, where they're going to and from. You can see the Sendix there in red obviously has a much larger pull. Pick and Save not so much because there's a Pick and Save in Menominee Falls right on county line. So that's why you're seeing Pick and Save is mostly here, close to the site. And then people in Menominee Falls, they have their own Pick and Save to go to. So they typically wouldn't come up here, but they may go up to Sendix. So this is just a little tool that we use. So when we're tracking tenants and who might be a good co-tenant to go in these regions, why would they want to be here? And we can also pull out demographics. Go ahead.
Just a quick question on this rank. What are those numbers?
Yeah, so if you want to go back one more. So the ranking, this is based on the state. So if you zoom in there, James, on the Pick and Save, I should have I can't quite see. Let me turn around here. So on the Pick and Save, you can see this is number 21 out of 79 as far as visits. Some of these we also have sales numbers on, because sometimes sales and visits don't always correlate perfectly, usually pretty well, but you can see the Pick and Save does very well across the state, 21 out of 79 as a number of visits. Sendix is a little bit unique because some of the Sendix are, like Whitefish Bay is a very small Sendix, but it has it's a lot of people for how small it is. We can track it by number of square feet, all sorts of different metrics. There's a ton of metrics we can pull out. This is just a very easy one to comprehend. So we use this a lot of times to say, hey, are there retailers struggling? And we can do, and if it's not in our database, if it's a local retailer, we can actually call the company that does this and it's a geocode it and put like a matrix. Go ahead.
Yeah, just to be clear, because we're still scratching our head. So looking at McDonald's, there's 282 of them in the state. Is that what that means? And
Yeah,
or-
it'd be 280. Did you pull the state, right? Okay.
and
So yeah, the state.
and so this is 196th best
Yeah, in the last year.
in the last year,
Yeah,
in
the
that
last-
time period, which is down below and it fell off the screen. Okay.
Yeah, we just kind of zoomed in.
So it's from February to end of January.
Yeah. And this is real time. So I could pull last week. Because
Okay.
it's literally real time on the, and it's interesting because sometimes if a national retailer is looking at something, let's say there was some major road construction on County Line and they're like, well, I don't want to go to this because this year it looks like the sales or the visits were really low. It's like we have to call them and say, well, actually, there was road construction. And so if you look back 2 years ago, you can see that the visits were much higher or it's going to change and improve. So this is like a little tool that we use. And so I could go to, Pet Supplies Plus and I could show that same trade area. Where are the people coming from where do they work? Where do they live? What are the demographics? Do they have children at home? Do they college educated? All those kind of things. So these are little tools that we use on each of these. And Germantown's unique because it is on the higher side for incomes, median household incomes. And so some retailers will say, we'd love to be in Germantown, but we might have problems with labor, especially on the restaurant front. It might be hard. I know Mequon has that problem. You guys have that problem. Brookfield has a problem, Franklin. So if it's higher median household income, sometimes, there's not as much employee base for those different categories. So, so this is just kind of more right here, but we can shoot down over to under the regional trade area. So go ahead. We can pick up local. It won't rank. I mean, we could say, let's just say there's a coffee chain that has 5 locations in the state of Wisconsin or regionally. I could go to this company and it usually takes a couple of weeks. And then we can say, let's geocode those and say, okay, let's just say Stone Creek or Collectivo. We can say, let's take all the Stone Creeks and Collectivos. How many people are going to those? How long are they staying? What are the demographics? So we can do it individually on each of them as well. And it's not a perfect metric, but it's pretty accurate. We've compared it, like we represent a lot of national retailers. We represent Cousin Subs, North Shore Bank, Associated Bank, BMO, a bunch of different retailers. And we've compared the number of visits and the sales with what we get off of this. And it's very, very close. The ranking is usually very accurate. So, so we use this all the time. Going down to the regional trade area, this is kind of the whole retail node. So obviously one side of the road is Menominee Falls, the other side is Germantown. So this whole retail node is what we look at when we talk to retailers. Say, okay, well, where do you want to be when you enter this market? Usually they pick specific markets. Sometimes if there's going to do one in the market, they may look at the 50-yard line. We want to be as close to the zoo interchange as we're going to do. But if we're going to do, 3, 4, 5 locations, we kind of pick and space based on drive times. We had talked about Walmart is kind of unique because it's actually not the percentage of people that go to Walmart is a small percentage of is actually Germantown people. It's mostly Menominee Falls and the north side of Milwaukee. And in the last few years with closing of Midtown and Silver Spring Walmart, it's probably 70% Milwaukee. So we just did that. This retail trade area, this is everyone that goes to that retail node, the regional retail node, this is where they're coming from. And I think we picked something like a minimum of 4 visits per year. And we can hone that in to say, hey, are they coming 12 times, one time? If it's one time, it's pretty much scattered. It's not very applicable. But you can see a lot of people are coming from the northwest side of Milwaukee or Menominee Falls to that trade area. So we use this a lot when we're tracking where are people coming from, or if we were to open up a store on County Line, is it going to cannibalize our sales of a retailer that we might have opened in Brookfield? And so that's one challenge of County Line. I don't think it's all telling the full story though, because when we get into the nuts and bolts of real estate, of that 1.7 million square feet, a lot of it is along County Line because that includes Fleet Farm, Menards, Walmart. There's a ton of large retailers that a lot of square footage. And the majority of the vacancy is the center with Linens and Things. So if you're familiar with that, when you go in where Aldi is located, there's a Pier 1, which is only 10,000 square feet. But the Linens and Things, that whole building is pretty much vacant right now. And there's a couple reasons for it. They're really not marketing it. There's a marketing sheet that you can see that we put in there, the firm that's marketing it, but there's no signage on it. Sometimes landlords may not adequately market it. I don't know the reason on that one. And that one also has some issues with topography. It's kind of set down a little bit. Why is it? Whitestone Station, when that opened up, that got a lot of attention, obviously. So, which right now it might be some competition, but at the end of the day, it'll probably be a positive for the region because everyone's like, okay, there's a lot more going on with Costco and everything in this region. So even though it's on the other side in Menominee Falls, it should be a net benefit long-term. Short-term, it might create some vacancies. So there's a couple reasons. And, with the access being a little bit challenging to that center, you have to kind of come in by the Aldi and then cut over to get to that center. That's one reason. The other vacancy that's been there a really long time, which you're probably familiar with, is between BW3s and Fleet Farm. There's that little building that sits there. It's right in, right out access only. So it creates some challenges with access. So there's some rationale. So in the grand scheme of things, your vacancy rate is very, very low. And there's some fundamental things about the actual real estate, why it's sitting vacant, not necessarily that you're doing anything wrong or there are any incentive programs that you can put in. But if someone comes to your committee or the chamber and says, hey, where can we find space? We want to be in your village, then you can kind of point them to these things or people that do what we do to help them find those spaces. But general retail has been changing. It's no secret. Cell phone, Amazon, omni-channel, most of the things that are backfilling these spaces are service-based, like gyms, pickleball, all sorts of things. If you can buy it online, it's really challenging to compete in.
Usually they say, hey, we only really need one store in the market. And so if we're going to do one store in the market, usually they try to be somewhere along 94, like the Zoo Interchange or Brookfield, because it's easier for people from Germantown can get to it, people from Muskego can get to it. Glendale's had the same problem. They said, hey, at Bayshore, why do we need a Gap when most of the people are buying stuff online? They can drive over to Mayfair and go to the Gap. So it's just a fundamental change in the way retail is.
Changed over the years. So I guess that's kind of what we do. And it's actually pretty positive. We mentioned other municipalities have had this similar type of issue. Grafton is one I'd point to that, they've got a regional trade area that's been created in Grafton with Costco and all their development by the hospital. They have kind of the neighborhood, they have a downtown, and then they have their old trade area, which was a Shopko that's at vacant for quite a few years, and Farm and Fleet backfilled that. So that took a while to happen, but it finally did happen. And now Grafton has almost no vacancy. And so you're kind of on that same path. Something will eventually happen there at some point. It's just a matter of when and convincing the retailers, okay, they look how everyone else is doing in the region and they say, we think we're the same customer base. We like where they're coming from and we're going to kind of go off of that. So it's kind of how we operate. And I guess we can open up for questions because that's more.
I have a bunch of questions.
Yeah, go for it. That's what these are about. I've been at so many of these committees and they are all like, well, what can we do for this or that? So
So on your heat map,
Mhm.
what is high, what is low? What are those numbers?
yeah, so
roughly?
that's by percentage, and on the bottom, there might be a little thing on this. I don't know if it gives the description of, so that's the concentration of people that go number of visits. So the number of visits that are going to this retail trade area. So this is, I didn't pick one retailer for the county line regional trade area. We just picked the whole retail node.
Right.
That node is what we look at when we're looking at this region. So we might have a retailer that's from out east and they're like, well, why should we consider this area? And we say, well, this is the trade area that's going to that area. And then we can hone in and say, okay, I can dive deeper and say, these are the demographics. So we've got, XYZ families with X number of kids that go to it. We've got people from the northwest side of Milwaukee that go to it. We've got, so you kind of go through. And so one retailer might say, well, my demographic I like to chase is I like the shopper going to Walmart. And so then they would say, I need to be by Walmart. And then another shopper might say, well, I want to be the demographic that goes to Sendix. So they would trend to that. The one good example would be if you look at Whole Foods around the country, usually it's a higher income demographic goes to it. You see higher end, Lululemon and type, female higher income usually is a Whole Foods shopper. And so then those retailers tend to try and congregate around those areas to get people, we call it daily needs. So the great thing about here with Sendix and Pick and Save, those are daily need shoppers that tend to go multiple times. And so the retailers on Mequon Road tend to attract people that might stop in weekly. The regional trade area, county line, it might be something you might stop monthly or quarterly. So you're not going to Costco unless you want their pizza slice or hot dog. You're not going there multiple times in a week. You might be going there once a quarter or once a month. And so that's the shopper and the difference of the shopper and why we help
Yeah.
retailers make decisions.
Is there a scale that's associated with low and high on this, or what is this number? It says high, it says low, but is it like,
It's
what constitutes high, what constitutes
like
low?
number of visits. Do you
Yeah.
remember what you pulled? Was it 12 per year on this, or like 70% of all? I think this whole map is 70% of all shoppers, and this is the area they are. Usually, it depends what metric I'm looking at. So if I'm
Okay.
looking at a grocer, I usually look at 12 or more visits
12.
on the retail trader. I'm assuming we did probably 4 or 6 on the retail. I can't recall and we can play around with it. And the more visits, if I put 1 visit per year, the majority of this map the red would creep out further that it's, they're only stopping at once. Like I live in Whitefish Bay. I've stopped at this Sendix probably 3 to 4 times. My daughter has dance things at Germantown High School, so I will stop at Sendix to buy flowers 3 times a year. So if I put 3 times a year, you're going to get a dot in Whitefish Bay that shows me going to the Sendix. So we
Okay.
try to scale that in. On the regional trader, I think we probably did 6. I don't recall off the top of my head.
Okay, so 6. Okay, so that's variable, and that trade area will change then based on what you input.
Yeah, what input I can put. So if I want to,
Okay.
if a retailer is, hey, they only go you're not purchasing certain items more frequently than maybe if it's a vehicle, you're not going there that frequently to a car dealership. But if
Right.
you're a grocery store, you want to see at least 12, sometimes even 24 a year, probably at least a couple times, even sometimes more frequently than that,
Sure.
because you want to see repetitive shopping to that.
Right.
Gyms are a good example of that. We call those daily needs. So gyms, schools, grocery stores. We use this we work with a lot of medical users. We represent Freighter and Ascension and Children's Hospital. And when we use those, we like to see, where are these people coming from? How frequently are they going? And so when we do that for those users, those are more destinational, unless it's like a walk-in clinic and then you're a family with multiple kids, you might be going to that clinic multiple times.
Mhm.
And so we kind of change it based on what retailer we're looking at and what we're looking with. So I think we just picked 6 because it was general.
Okay, so you said earlier that Germantown is difficult to put restaurants in because of labor. Is that an urban myth? because we actually have a very broad swath of housing values in this community and a lot of apartments, and more apartments are coming, and more apartments are being and affordable, supposed affordable homes are being built in communities around us. So I keep hearing this, but I kind of think it's an urban myth in a way. Is that actual? Do you have actual experience of
most-
that?
From retailers we work with, that's the
Okay.
feedback to us. So we represent Cousins Corporate and a lot of
Okay.
franchisees, and they will tell you certain municipalities, a lot of times they use a lot of times high school kids or college kids are some of
Okay.
the labor at some of these restaurants. And so some of the municipalities that are higher income, those kids tend to be in more club sports and things, and they're just kind of overscheduled. They've got a lot of
That's true.
extracurriculars. So they're not able to, take on the jobs like they might have 20, 30 years ago before this phenomenon of club sports and all these overscheduling kind of happened with the kids. And so they find it much easier to find labor if they're in a more of a blue collar, like slightly lower moderate median household income.
Mhm.
And so they say it all the time. They say, we always have the sales. And Germantown is interesting because it's like you've got some good density right here, but on the edges of town where it's still growing, there's not the housing density that you might have. So each municipality has a different, challenge to it. And let's just take Shorewood and Wauwatosa are very, very dense and have pretty high incomes. And so they've got kind of a little bit of both. You have higher income, but not quite as much density here. And so the density, in the one thing, I don't do industrial, but I kind of understand how it works. And some of the industrial users that are looking for labor to work in the manufacturing basis, they usually want to be closer to the urban center, like a city like Milwaukee, to get labor to them. And not too far out. So I like Western Waukesha County has a big challenge with that right now because they're like, well, a lot of our workforce was in West Dallas, Milwaukee, and they're having to drive out, and then they just have to pay them significantly more. So then the numbers just start not working because they can get the labor, but they're going to have to pay up because people are commuting further to go to that job.
Sure. Okay. And then have been talking amongst ourselves about promoting businesses to come here into the existing spaces, not so much new construction, because plenty is being done on that end. But the empty facilities have been neglected essentially. And so what examples have you run into where villages or cities have said, we want to do something to at least bring attention to the fact that, hey, we've got great spaces. And I'm not just looking for, we're just not looking for, I don't think, talk to the realtor, because, okay,
Yeah.
we can do that, but there's also other things that we could do, like we have job fairs with the current businesses that are here. That is a great networking opportunity, which could have a different bent to it if we're also looking for other ways of bringing in people who aren't here already. So
Yeah, facade
give
grants.
some-
I know you already had the loan pool. Sometimes we'll see things, like City of Milwaukee has facade grants for, signage or changing a facade. So, construction costs are very expensive right now. So you're not seeing as much new construction in commercial.
right.
So you'll see that first slide I showed, square footage of new I think you had Chase Bank, but there's just very few examples the last few years of new construction in the only ones you're seeing are small one-off. You're not seeing speculative, which is good because that'll give some time for some of the existing spaces to catch up. You're just not getting a lot of what they call mid-box development anymore. The, TJ Maxx's and Marshalls and those kind of spaces. You don't really see a lot of construction in that side. But it would be facade grants, the loan pool, and then making sure they're aware of it, whether community development director, Chamber of Commerce has this information at their fingertips. So if people come to them, say, hey, we offer these, is a $25,000 lower interest going to really move the needle? It may. It would help. Is hey, we have these offers available. But typically, any kind of things that are going on, like in Milwaukee and I don't, do you guys have any business improvement districts in the village? Okay. So sometimes the commercial owners will get together and create a business improvement district, which is basically a small, let's call it a small tax on each other. And they use that to promote the area, to bring in more business or events. They might have like, you know, a street festival. So most of like the street festivals you'll see in Milwaukee are put on by these business improvement districts. And
Okay.
that brings in people to the area like, oh, I could see myself working here. And those businesses have an opportunity to partake in those. So that's one thing. But then some owners don't necessarily want to be part of those business improvements because they view it as another tax on the tenants that they're paying into. It's usually minimal. A lot of times it's just like portering, picking up of garbage in a neighborhood, beautification. You'll see, you know, planters and things like that. Certain areas in the city that might be like a higher crime area, they might have like community liaisons that kind of walk around and hand out stuff and just to people feel security, things like that. So.
Yeah, we
No, I
don't
mean,
have-
that's just examples of different,
I
we
know.
don't have that problem here. So that's just something
We're
that
not there.
other municipalities
Yes.
have done. I mean, it really comes down to dollars and cents. And it's like, if the sales are here and whether it's tariffs or just cost of food or whatever is keeps rising and rising, and labor keeps rising and rising. If sales aren't going up enough to counteract that, they can't spend all the money they're very picky on where they choose and how much money they spend.
Right. And we're not going to, and I just want to make it clear that we're not talking about tax incremental funding or anything.
No,
We're not talking about anything like that.
I mean, that helps with some new development, obviously. And that's,
Yeah.
if there's new
That's a
development.
different
you almost-
subject.
Any larger retail development in the last 5 years that's of substance, white don't say, you're only seeing it if there is a TID created because the numbers are not with construction or not, the rents aren't high enough. And the retailers can't pay the rents because then they're just not profitable. So, but that that's why I don't think the vacancy is that big of an issue. There's other means, you know, whether it's ownership that is not willing to put in money, because most owners have to put in what's called tenant improvement allowance. And so if a restaurant shows up, they say, okay, I'm gonna lease this space, but Mr. Landlord, you need to put $1 million of build out towards my space. And essentially, they have to go to the bank. Interest is higher than it was 5-6 years ago, quite a bit, double almost. So they get a loan, and then they say, okay, well, this tenant, what's the credit of that tenant? And then they have to loan it to them. So that landlord's on the hook to pay back that loan of the improvements they put if the retailer fails. Some landlords would just say, it's too risky. I'd rather just keep it vacant. And so that happens a lot of times. You see just some vacancy sitting there because the landlord doesn't want to put $1 million into the space if it comes back to them 2 years later and they got to tear it all because it doesn't work for the next tenant.
Right. And so do you see that continuing on in the next 3 to 5 years?
I
That
don't have a
trend?
crystal ball. I don't think construction rates are coming down because even if the materials are coming down, there's a lot of people retiring and the labor has been creeping up and creeping up. So there's not enough subcontractors, electricians, plumbers, things of that nature. So even if we get some relief with like commodity prices, which commodity prices are up too. I mean, part of that was COVID, part of it's tariffs. There's a couple of reasons why commodities are higher on construction, but you know, copper's up. Data centers are eating up a lot of copper. So that's eating into construction pricing. And so that's one thing that we're battling. That usually kind of ebbs and flows, but the labor thing is more of a macro thing, as people are retiring and there's just not enough people to backfill those jobs right now. So construction, I wouldn't bank on it personally, but I have a crystal ball that construction prices are really going to be coming down much in the future. So.
Right. Well, I could continue talking to you forever, but I'm sure we have other things to do. I thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions?
I had a couple quick things. So in your expert opinion, the parcels, particularly the big box parcels, do we wait it out? Or do we try to grab some redevelopment resources like grants from the state or something? You know, I mean, my office has been in Wauwatosa, and right on Highway 100. So I've seen them moving in and out of retail. I mean, Mayfair is in some ways a shell of its former self and on down the road, you know. So I also see Four Corners. I see Mayfair Collections where there's retail below and apartments above or whatever they're doing, and those are empty or
Yeah.
they are not leased out. So I guess taking all that, it looks like geographic proximity is the most important thing to anything. So in your expert opinion with what you do, you know, maybe what is the best option for us to pursue at this time, or is it multiple options to pursue?
Yeah,
That's just my
usually
question.
we look at those sites as like, hey, does it make sense for redevelopment? Mayfair is working on apartments to backfill the Boston store. Same with Southridge, the Boston store in Brookfield is getting redeveloped. There's gonna be a public market, some retail out front. So does the site make sense for something else? Is the owner willing to play ball with you? You know, that's the other side of the coin, the one that you have a lot of vacancy on. Pretty sure he's an out-of-state owner that, you know, I'm not sure how involved this person is. And so like that's another, you know, I think Bob was going to reach out, and Bob reached out to me, said, hey, you guys do a lot of retail. What do you think about this? Can you come talk to us? And so, you know, reaching out to those owners and say, hey, what's your challenge why, you know, if it is in a TID, if there's any money left in the TID, if we give you some money for facades, would that help or not? There was a TID that was created in a larger TID because there's going to be some other development in the area and some of that money was being used. If it's functionally obsolete, does it help or not? Each site is, by side, James actually uses this and was calling a lot of the users in Mayfair Collection, some of those mid-box. So the old Roundy's distribution that got converted to a bunch of mid-box users across. And some of those retailers are doing okay, but some are not doing so hot. Say, okay, well, you still want to be in this region. Would you come up to Germantown? We've got some mid-box spaces. So that's kind of like one thing that we don't work on, that one with all the vacancy. We have the Pier 1, which there's been a few users at the table back and forth, but there's some underlying things on real estate too, that it might be deed restrictions. There might be a deed restriction that is in the land that says this business can't go here because someone might have owned it prior and put a deed restriction. A perfect example, Quick Trip, you know, they've got the old PDQ and then they've got that site that's everything they sell, they put a restriction on gas station, alcohol, tobacco, and a few other restrictions, like we call sin uses. Like they don't want anything to go in one of their former sites. It's like a sin use, we call. And so that site will have some restrictions on it. It's a good corner, so something will probably happen there. So you kind of just let the free market speak to itself usually, and that's the best thing. You know, planning and architectural and all the committees, letting the free market play within the parameters that have set and not getting too aggressive on conditional use is really important, because, you know, when a new use comes in, it might say, you know, like a good example would be gas stations. It's like, hey, well, we don't really need any more gas stations. You know, we're not, you know, most municipalities, you know, at least in our eyes, shouldn't be master planners. If it fits within the zoning, then it fits in the zoning. If it doesn't fit in the zoning, it doesn't fit in the zoning. Because if they're going to build something new, it's going to be to a higher standard. It's not going to get through architectural review and everything unless it hits this level. But what happens is everyone else in that corridor has to up their game. So, you know, if this gas station comes in, the old gas station that hasn't put a dime into it for 40 years, now is either going to have to up their game to compete, or it's going to be redeveloped into something else because they're not going to be able to compete with the new gas station that comes to town. So that's one thing, that letting the free market kind of raise all boats. That's the way we see it, rather than trying to micro plan everything.
Any other quick questions? Yoletta? No? Jeff?
May we call you if we have other questions?
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. My contact's in there. So like anytime, like we do this all the time. And so
Yeah.
happy to do it. So.
It's our first go around, and you know, it's sparking lots of questions. And
My contact is on the brochure for the former period, so those contact is on.
Yeah,
Okay.
The North Shore Bank that, you know, we represent North Shore Bank, and James's dad actually runs North Shore Bank. So when they put the North Shore Bank in, it didn't quite, and, you know, the village played ball with them to allow, because most of these retailers have their branding. I won't name the municipality I had, but there was a municipality that we were trying to do a McDonald's in, and they wanted green arches. I said, well, where besides Sedona, where have you ever seen green arches? And that's not even a rule in Sedona anymore. So they just keep it because it's kind of a unique thing. Like actually they could change in Sedona. That when they first went in, that was a thing in Sedona. And so they spend a lot of money getting their image and branding. And when they come in, they're like, well, we'll just skip this municipality and go to the next one if because there's a whole country out there of real estate opportunities. So not getting overbearing on what their branding is all I'd recommend. So,
Thank you.
Excellent.
all right.
Thank you
Well,
very
thank
much.
you
Yeah, no
so
problem.
much
Yeah,
for the presentation,
Yes.
and I'm sure you'll be hearing from this group. We can give you a list of the commissioners, so you know what might be coming down the
So,
pike.
yeah, sounds great. Thank you.
Yeah,
Take care.
thank you so much. All right, that was great. All right, moving along. So, got unfinished business. Now, a quick update on the Germantown, item A, a new business, Germantown Business Loan Pool Monthly Report. Just wanted to let you know, I had a meeting with Sherry and Matt at Bank 59 a week ago, and we're going to be putting as I've mentioned, we are going to split the application into two parts so that we had the comment at our first soiree where we introduced the loan pool, and we had objections to giving out personal financial information. So at that point, this is what some of the other municipalities are doing. So it makes good sense. So we can it's two parts. They send part one to the village. We give them the blessing, and then they go to the bank. They fill out part two with all the financial information. That's what we're working on. We'll have it available in March to review. And we'll also have an update on all of the loans that have gone through. Any questions? That's all it was. Okay, thanks very much. And next, I'd like to bring up Christian with the EDWC to give us a report on Flamingo Marine expansion in Germantown and just discussion on support. Thank you for coming. We have like about 10 minutes, Christian. So we want to make sure we focus on Flamingo. Is that? Sure, sure. Is that okay with the board? Can we go to Flamingo first and then, okay. Inquiring minds want to know.
Is that correct?
Sorry.
All right, I'm gonna skip over on my side here too. Everybody's favorite word, disruption. So, setting the stage a little bit here, won't assume that everybody's familiar with Flamingo and what they do. They were born effectively from a company that actually has its roots in Germantown, Seven Marine. It is a marine manufacturer of high-powered boat engines that was eventually purchased by Volvo. The business sold, which enabled the current ownership or some of the current ownership to have the resources to start their next venture and grow some new opportunities within the same market. You can see here that their niche that they're trying to cultivate really is within the recreation market, in particular the pontoon boat market, which historically has been more of a craft production process as opposed to more of a mass production type of effort. And so what they've done is through technology, through essentially changing the way that a pontoon boat is designed, they've created it so that the pontoon boat itself can be configurable and serve multiple different uses and therefore fit within a mass production type of manufacturing facility. That is the disruption, if you will, in that particular market. And they look to take significant advantage of that through their Flamingo 5 product, which again, I don't think is important in terms of some of the strategic advantages of that particular product as much as it is what is the potential for this company to engage in a new level of manufacturing, and what impact does that have on the TID district where the Zilber development is located. And right now, the Zilber development has space for 7 buildings, as you may know. There are 6 that have already been constructed, and the TID is cash flowing well, even though there are some vacancies in the 6th. To fully meet the obligations, there really does need to be the build out of the 7th. So one of the strategic priorities that we have understood from the village is to try to get that TID closed and cash flowing and cashed out sooner rather than later. And the way that that'll happen is through the completion of building 7. Some good news is that with the support that we've been able to structure to be able to tee up for you or the village board to consider formally. Not only have they committed to occupying what is the remainder of building 6, but there's also been a recent announcement that May Steel will be and has successfully negotiated some terms with the Zilber Group to occupy some of the remaining real estate, which combined would be the trigger to be able to advance if you will, building 7, and therefore see ultimately a successful TID closeout, if not on time early. This is just running down the features of the boat, which I'm going to assume you took an advanced look at prior to us coming in, so won't go waste your time on that. This is the manufacturing facility and the way that they would like to lay out the interior. Why this is important to do a little bit of a pause is the amount of equipment that needs to go in is pretty epic in order to make that mass production model work. 1, and 2, there is quite a bit of structural improvements or leasehold improvements that need to be made in the facility, which is basically a box to be able to operate under a production scenario. So those were 2 fundamental barriers that we understood after meeting with the company and doing some due diligence on them, that we knew we needed to address in order to facilitate the opportunity here in Germantown and help with the overall community objective relative to that TID. The next slide shows another point of return on public investment, if you will, or the public purpose, which is obviously prosperous lives and taking advantage of the skill sets that are in our market. We do have a heritage of marine manufacturing in the region. This leverages that heritage as well as some of these primary skills, in particular the welding and fabrication, which can be very hard to find in other locations. So we've got some strategic advantage with that, and there is some availability of workforce in that market that we're able to take advantage of to support this particular project and ultimately provide employment for residents and the surrounding region. So the typical process, this is a reflection of a very typical process that EDWC would go through in working with our community and bringing a deal forward ultimately to the village board for its consideration. And that starts with really engaging the company. And I had an earlier slide that shows how our referral process works. And you probably saw that in your packet. The top referral sources tend to be the banking community, the, accountants, developers, and that indeed was a referral source for this, was the developer, as well as actually the municipality. The planning department had an inquiry, and they were looking for some assistance and reached out to EDWC as well. So we had two reach outs in this case. That resulted in us working with the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation and Zilber to meet up with the company and get to know who they were, what they're about, the management team, understand what their barriers to any location, much less the Germantown location, and really get down to what matters so we could bridge the objectives of the community with the objectives of the company. Ultimately, in some cases, that's where it ends. Doesn't go any further than that. There may be a variety of different reasons. We don't feel like there's a community fit, or the community doesn't feel like there's a community fit. The administration doesn't feel like there's a fit. Maybe some of our early due diligence turned up some things that would make it a problematic prospect to work with. None of that was the case here, so we went on to a proposal stage. And the proposal stage essentially says, here are some options and some structural possibilities. And then we try to hone that into a firmer proposal that even tells us whether or not it's worth spending any additional time or resources in working with this company. Core to that proposal is several, I'll call it Swiss cheese, if you will, in that there are several caveats or holes to the proposal, meaning nothing happens unless there's approval of a village board, as one example. So it's not a guarantee of a deal structure. Same, another caveat is the deal is subject to underwriting by our own loan committee. So if the loan committee were to say that this doesn't underwrite, then it doesn't move forward. So it literally is a talking point document that allows us to say, do we have any grounds for continuing the conversation? If the yes, ma'am.
Here. Just regarding the process, you had a timeline somewhere in here. I think it's the next slide, which, yeah, there it is, March. So it sounded like that Zilber and then the Plan Commission also got a request in March and started the whole process of looking into whether or not this was a good situation. So my question is if there is no commitment and there's no guarantee, I mean, it seems like an awfully long time before it actually goes before the village board. And a lot of work is put into this without having, and they've already moved into the space. So if the village board says no, are they fully prepared to deal with it in whatever way they were expecting to get something out of the arrangement? Or is that, I mean, it just seems like an awful lot of time goes by without talking with the village and maybe getting a read from the village board at an earlier point in the process, in order so that you're not wasting people's time. That's the wrong way of putting it, but it just seems like it's very cumbersome to wait a year and then be told no if for some reason a village board says no. And so is this normal? I guess that's part of my question for the process. Is that normally how these discussions go? It takes that amount of time because of everyone having to come together?
The length of time is very normal.
Okay.
Yeah, that unfortunately, they often have their own boards that they're dealing with internally. They've got investment groups that they're having conversations with. They're considering other sites potentially. All of that machination definitely can take quite a bit of time. This is actually a somewhat accelerated time frame. If that
Really?
makes
Okay.
if it's hard to believe. There was a day when economic development projects were a 2-year time frame. That's just greatly compressed. Now we're talking typically under a year. But yeah, that's pretty standard. You know, we definitely support strong village board oversight of economic development projects. And the way that these get done most effectively, which if one wants a successful outcome, it's that the business locates there and succeeds there. It's not just the location there, it's that they have the ability to succeed there. That happens when the village board really interfaces in two places. One would be early on through providing guideposts, guidance through policy development of what constitutes targets, appropriate use, really essentially guidance for the administration as it relates to your expectations and objectives for economic development. Once those expectations and objectives are established, at that point in time, it's really the job of an administration in concert with technical support like EDWC to execute. So boards oversight, administration execute. Negotiation doesn't happen at the committee level. It's never successful like that, particularly in public spheres where you deal with open records, open meetings. Companies just don't operate like that from a competitive standpoint. So that's where having those guidelines, those guideposts, those limiters, that framework of expectation is helpful, because when they operate in that and they get to the point of a frame deal, the expectation is that there's a strong likelihood that deal would be able to successfully move forward. If there was something that stepped outside of the guidepost, then that would be a trigger, and we would advise that, hey, you need to check back in with your public body, the oversight body, because this is stepping outside of whatever guideposts or policies that they have generated for that economic development activity. So in this case, the guidance that really drove this was the desire to see this TID be successful and close as early as possible. And we knew that this was one way to get that done. We also look at the return on investment for the taxpayer, meaning after incentives, there has to be a net positive fiscal impact. You've seen, at least the village board membership here has seen some of those impact assessments that we do. We make sure that that's the case. And then clearly the business needs to underwrite, meaning they need to have the capacity to be able to deliver on what they say they're going to do. That did take longer with this particular project, in part because they're a younger company. Two, they've got some strategic investors that were, wanting to be, I would say, more protective of their information than not. So we had to push back pretty hard. And then the deal structure, we, requested some pretty tight engagement by the ownership group to tie them in security wise that initially there was pushback on, and eventually they relinquished. But so those kinds of things take some time in order to develop.
Okay, these microphones are terrible. So to summarize, now that this is there, and whatever happens with the village board, but for the closing early of this TID, what I heard you say is that building 7 needs to be built, correct?
For accelerating it, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not there yet, correct?
Nope, and it wouldn't get built until the other facilities are occupied. As you can imagine, they don't want to spec too much space and have all
Right.
those costs.
So we've got empty spaces right now in a number of the buildings, and we're talking about the entire TID, right? It's not just the Zilber properties.
We're talking about, in terms of the Zilber development, we're focused on it. Building 7 builds out. That significantly increases the potential from a pro forma standpoint of that TID closing out early.
Okay, but what I'm asking is, besides this one, which is great that they're going to make some boats here, we have, there's another building that has vacancies, right? The second one up from the road. Yeah. And so that needs to be filled before number 7 can be built. Is that what you're saying? Or am I misunderstanding?
We don't know
We
I
don't
mean,
know.
I've talked with them. I don't
Okay.
know their exact formula for whether they need to be 100% or what their, the commitment level is. What we do know is the vacancies that they had before, which was this entire building, and that was insufficient to trigger building number 7.
Okay.
We understand from them that if they can fill this, this is more easily addressable in the current market. And they are seeing some, and we are seeing actually significant interest for additional space and needs for space of a larger scale, where building 7 then becomes a key part of their strategy. So they've told us, in short, look, if we can get building 6 filled, we're in a much stronger position to be able to construct building 7.
Okay, great. Thanks for the explanation.
Yeah, you bet. And I'm happy to jump back to any slides. I skipped,
Sure.
at your request, so.
Go ahead, Scott.
Well, I have a couple questions. I looked through the timeline and you don't have the agreement really in there. It was just the one slide, like the one page about what we're saying we're going to do as part of the project, right? So, we're a subscriber to EDWC on a yearly basis. Were there hours that we gave forth as part of that to help you work on it? And is that part of how this process works? That's my first question.
Yes, it is.
So we used our credits, or basically our planning department said you can use whatever credits you have that we have, on a yearly subscription rate to go out and get this business for us, basically.
I don't know that it was the planning department, it was administration.
Okay, well, I mean, not the village board. They don't have to act on that. It's administration, okay? So that was the one question, which I thought was the case. And then maybe I need a little to understand this a little more of how, TID borrowing and forgivable loans and everything are structured. I come from the finance world, so I understand it, but of course, this is a different world than normal. So when it first hit me, it said that, to me, it was like, okay, so we're using some sort of TID resources to back a loan to help out this company, okay? But the EDWC says we're giving you a $750,000 loan. It looks like the risk is on the municipality inside the TID. There's no risk to you. The EDWC, with your loan pool of 20 million or whatever you have, your banks, I look at it and see a zero risk loan to you. So I guess my question is, on which authority do we apply TID resources, and who has the authority to say we can do that? I believe that rests with the village board, does it not, or am I wrong about that? I'm confused about how we put our resources forth. Is that part of the agreement that we have with EDWC? Is it authorized by administration? The village board can still say no to this, right? Or are they out of the picture?
Absolutely.
So, but the company sounds like they're assuming that they're going to get this deal because that's why they're moving. They've moved in, correct?
They are right now in the midst of doing the leasehold improvements.
Okay, so they're going to move in. So they have a contract, basically. Okay. So how does this affect them if the village board says no? Are they still coming here? I mean, they're here. They're not going to go back to Grafton.
Well, as I said, the success definition would be not just that a company locates, but that they actually successfully execute on manufacturing and creating the jobs and the opportunities for prosperous lives. And part of the incentive is designed to support the leasehold improvements and the equipment acquisition. And so to the extent that we can help them at an early time in the project, that facilitates their success at that location. You had a lot of different comments and questions, so I'm going to try to break those down. If I miss one, please come back and force me to go back to it, if that's okay. Structurally, what's being proposed is effectively a loan that does have a payback mechanism of the TID, provided there's certain performance that the company does, the performance in the form of CapEx, jobs, so on. So there are two parties that have to work together in order to make this particular collaborative incentive work. It would not be accurate to say that there is no risk by the county, which is why it goes in front of our loan committee and they underwrite it. Because if the performance isn't there, there's not a forgiveness. And if there's not a forgiveness, that means the company is on the hook for the payment, not the TID.
But if it was a general business loan in general, they would always be on the hook for it in the normal world. If a business takes out a line of credit, they have to pay
Absolutely.
that back. So this to me
Absolutely.
is, I guess it's probably me.
But what you were mentioning earlier, sir, was there is no risk on the part of the county. And what I'm sharing with you is there absolutely is risk if the business does not perform what they have agreed to perform in order to produce the value to the taxpayer that we have calculated and estimated. That loan is not forgivable. It is not on the TID. It would be on the county as a standard business loan. So we would have to continue to receive payments and they would have to continue to be successful under a normal loan condition. And that would be risk if they went out of business. That's not on the TID. That would be on the county or EDWC to.
So is the TID funding this project?
TID,
The increment inside the TID, is it funding this
if
project?
they perform doing what they said they would do, the TID would be assuming the payments, making for the company the loan forgivable. But they
So,
would have to perform and generate the increment. They would have to create the jobs. They would have to perform, and then the TID takes over payment.
so it sounds like we're helping out the developer quite a bit. They already got a TID to build 6 buildings, and now we're reaching into our TID that's cash flowing and providing them with more resources. We're helping out Zilber built another building. We're giving them more of a benefit. We may be helping out the company inside. I don't, nothing against them, but our resources inside the TID, our cash flow, whatever you call is built up in the TID, is being used as an advantage or a benefit to the developer because they are leasing space from the developer. Am I right about that? They didn't buy the building.
They did not buy the building. They are leasing.
Okay, so I'm just trying to understand how that was allowed, as it were, without village board oversight because they decide things. We're still working on that, right?
I think you answered that earlier, is that however the original TID was structured and whatever the direction that was given at the time, prior to prior to March 2025, because that's when this started, there was a direction for how to close out TIDs and deal with the different types of arrangements that were needed in order to get to that building 7, so that you could get to the point of, or we could get to the point of closing the TID. So whatever was set up prior to March 2025 from an administrative direction, from a village board direction, however it came about, we don't know. Because you were encouraging us to come up with policies and you stated that that's what is guiding how these decisions are made. So basically we're talking about the former administration, and whatever they put into place is what has been guiding how these things happen, along with the fact that we want to close the TID as quickly as possible.
And I would say the latter point is
Yeah.
because there isn't a ton of policy, the latter point
Right.
is the driving force. And yes, there's multiple benefactors, no doubt about it, the
Right.
developer being one. And that's understood when you enter in the original development agreement with the developer that their success means the success of the TID, which eventually means the closure of the TID. Germantown has actually a really outstanding, and by outstanding, I mean just like profound case example of that. And it was a case where EDWC took some heat many years ago for proposing an amendment to TID number 4. TID number 4, for those who maybe weren't around or don't recall, is the TID in the business park that's on the east side of town between Donjas Bay and Mequon Road, where you've got Wisconsin Stamping there, and Ellsworth Adhesives and Bradley Corporation and so on. That TID prior to, actually I pulled up the, I get out of this presentation, but I pulled up the TID report on that. And prior to 2003, it was in the red. It had been created for the purpose of building the infrastructure for that park. The park infrastructure was created. There was for several years not a lot of development. The market also was contributing to that at the time. And it was in the red. What it didn't have available in the toolkit was the allowance for incentives. And that was one of the guidance that came through in that TID plan, was there was no allowance for incentives.
Yeah.
It would have been on the general revenue, a general revenue obligation, had that TID not turned around. Now, you said 10 minutes, more than 10 minutes ago, so don't have time to get into the long story, but the short version of the story is we advocated with difficulty. We advocated that the TID get amended, that an incentive allowance be created, that there be an initial catalytic project, which was Bradley Corporation. Again, long story as to how that evolved. And then after that, you step down the TID incentive, which was done, and that will lead to several other potential opportunities to come into play, which it did. Ultimately, it led to the early closure of that TID, which led to a rebate of surplus TID funds back to the various taxing bodies. At closure, there was over $1 million worth of surplus funds that were distributed back when it closed early, 700,000 plus of which went to the school district.
Right.
Had
So
had
I'm
that-
going to stop
that
right there.
adjustment not occurred,
Yeah.
we would have been in a different situation. This is parallel in that we have those incentives, so we can deploy those to elicit the same outcome.
Yes, but it really is important to get this TID closed. We have a financial situation here in the village that we cannot keep building on these TIDs. Our debt is going up, our debt service is going up. The amount of taxation that's going to have to be applied to individual people is going to be unsustainable in a very short period of time. And so we need to definitely close this TID as quickly as possible. So and probably enough nuts and bolts about TIDs for this discussion. But the question for about Flamingo is, where are they going to store the boats once they've made them? Because presumably they're going to spit out a whole bunch of these. Are they going to store them here? Are they going to go back to Grafton or out to dealers, or?
They would go out to dealers.
Okay.
The part of their innovation with this manufacturing process is that the dealers do not have to pre-order or pre-guess the
Okay.
type of configuration, so they literally can go out on demand, and that's what the production methodology is here.
That's
It's a
great.
just in time,
So they're just in time and made to order, basically.
basically.
Takes the floor point interest down dramatically.
Yeah, right.
Well,
I have okay, I have one quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
January 2026, which we just passed, it says EDWC, that's you, drafts model IGA, intergovernmental agreement
Yes.
for Washington County and Germantown consideration. What the heck is that?
It's
I know
what-
what an intergovernmental
Sure.
agreement is, but why do we need that if it's in a TID?
Because the two parties have to, first of all, there's oversight. So the village board has oversight over the deal. The deal ultimately would not move forward without the village board's consideration, and nor should it without the village board's consideration and ultimate approval or rejection. And then two, as I was describing the structure of the deal earlier, it involves the two parties collaborating, and that's where the intergovernmental comes in. So if the company performs, there would be a payment from the TID, and Washington County needs to know that that would be coming. In return, the village needs to know that if there isn't TID increment, or if the performance isn't there, that the county has it as a note, and that's effectively what the IGA states.
Because Washington County is underwriting it?
The
Or why?
EWC is underwriting it as an under administrative agreement with Washington County. We're underwriting the credit worthiness of the note, because ultimately we would be carrying it if this did not succeed.
So are you part of Washington County?
I am not, and we are not. The organization is not. And that's by design, for the reason that I just gave earlier.
Mhm.
There were, prior to EDWC over 20 years ago, you had deals that were being done at the board level. And at that point, it wasn't business decisions that were happening. You have the people who are negotiating and structuring the deal overseeing themselves. Well, you can imagine what happens in that scenario. Politics comes into play, people with money influence, friends do each other's deals. And so they intentionally said, we need to segregate underwriting outside of that space and oversee rather than construct.
So did you get involved in March of 2025?
Yes.
And we're just hearing about this in January, February of 2026. And this is scary to me. Why we wouldn't be informed of something of this epic proportion, right? So I think we have a failure to communicate at some point. No, but I'm saying that we're not informed. The other thing I would ask you to think about is how can perhaps this body be able to assist? We have we're supposed to be working with the Plan Commission as well as the Village Board. So I think that, and we've accelerated from, I haven't seen you in a couple of years, from the last or 2023 when you put the that pillar presentation together. We're in the almost like, I don't know what the medium thing. We're accelerated. We meet every month.
It's
We're
awesome.
doing stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we are serious, and we want business to come here, and we want to make it easy. So just keep that in the back of your mind.
If you don't mind, I want to offer that I did not use credits for this. I took my own personal time to do this, but I recognize the opportunity here to really support this whole policy discussion, and that guidance would be super helpful for us as well. And so I do have a document, I've got it on my tablet here right now, but if part of what you wanted to do as part of that meeting regularly and accelerated would be to take a look at, it's like a workbook of the different kinds of questions you'd want to ask in building a policy, pull together various best practices, various sources, and be happy to show
get
you
a
what
copy.
that workbook looked like and
Sure.
and kind of go from there.
Could you send that to Maddie and myself? That'd be great. And Maddie can distribute it. That'd be great for follow-up.
Yep.
Any other questions? We need to move on.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so.
Thanks, Christian.
Appreciate you guys spending the time.
Yep, you got it. See, yeah, I want one of those little boats. Little. All right. We're the Flamingo 7. Okay, we got Flamingo. Okay, we're coming back to, what item was that? We're coming back to, the business loan pool. Hey, Maddie, can you give us advice on that?
Yeah, sure. So thank you for allowing me to go run back to my desk and grab this. I'm happy to pass this over if anybody wants to see it, but yep, the address that he provided on his application is in Germantown.
It is in Germantown? Awesome.
Yes, great. So could we go back to the motion on the floor? Go right ahead.
I make a motion to approve the
We already have a
Germantown
motion.
Business Loan Development Pool application for Brandon Medved Photography.
Oh, we already had.
Second.
Discussion.
I just have a discussion point on the process.
Yes.
Maybe we can do it at another meeting. But I just was wondering, when we get an application, does the office just send it through, or do they verify it's like going by the rules for like, what's that process?
So we get it from the applicant
Uh-huh.
usually. They've already talked to Bank 59 by the time we get it from them.
Okay,
And then we put it on the agenda for you all to look at.
cool. Excellent.
Are you not sending this to Gosha?
Gosha and Steve have requested to not have to be involved in this process at this point.
Okay.
Because of the oversight from you and from the bank at this, through the
Oh,
process.
we got enough people.
Yep.
Oh, all right. Well, that's okay. Village clerk's office, and then it comes to us. So we thank you for that, doing that. Shortens the process. Okay. Learned a lot. Anything, any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That motion passes. And then I just wanted to bring this up. Item D, discussion regarding the is it March 9th, going to be the Tourism Commission? We have, we want to move the Celebrate Germantown, and we want to get it over to them. And so if anyone had input for that item, why don't we send it to Maddie? And she can gather it all. We'll put it in a little presentation, and then we'll bring it up to tourism. Yes? Go ahead.
I think that for that, we should definitely just include the presentation that Brendan gave.
Yes,
And all of the feedback that we had previously provided and send that
does that make sense? Yeah,
over to tourism.
right.
Skip C.
That was, oh, you're absolutely correct. We were going to discuss, and then, do we need to vote on that for the discussion, moving things forward to the tourism? We already did it. I think we approved it. Right. Okay. And another discussion quickly, EDC advisory role to the Plan Commission. Anyone have a brilliant ideas for bridging?
Well, I handed out the Muni code and
Yes.
it actually says more than just advising to the, providing advice to village board and the plan commission. And it actually talks about what Christian was talking about earlier. And that is to formulate, manage, administer the village's economic development program. And policy deliberations, which is item D. So, I mean, I think we should probably have a longer discussion about this
March?
at a meeting, because we have done a few things, we've tried a few things, we've decided that we can't do them for various reasons. And we are now turning to what many of us have stated prior, is that what really is economic development. And today's meeting showed that, I think, with the two different groups of visitors that we had. And I have some ideas, but we're over time right now.
Correct. So, I I'd like to propose that we move this to, I'll put it back on the agenda for March. Will most people be here for March? Okay, that'd be great. Anything else?
March
It would be March 10th. The next meeting is March 10th. And that brings us to adjournment. And
Move to adjourn.
I need a second, please. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. This meeting is adjourned at 7:30. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for listening.
It's great.
All for staying over.
Okay, perfect. It's like, who ended up with the?
Just donation, you know, an estimation. School board meeting, I never heard that. Such a deal with donate.
Yeah, we could put it on the golf course.
It's all down the river.
Now that's a video.